Hey, good evening, and welcome to Penguins Postgame. Back for the first time in a few days. I'm Matt Gajtka, and this is the National Hockey Now YouTube channel and also Pittsburgh Hockey Now's Facebook page. And yes, if you're up late, I'm assuming you watched the game, and I'm assuming that you're at least a little disappointed as the Penguins give the extra point to Calgary. The Flames remain unbeaten in regulation. Nazem Kadri ties it with the goaltender off in the final minute. And oh, geez, it was a long shootout, but Kirkland wins it for Calgary after Dustin Wolf stops Evgeny Malkin in the sixth round. The Penguins actually had two shots for the win in the shootout. Letang and Eller. Rust scored. Raquel scored in the shootout, but Mantha answered for Calgary, and we went to extras after Rust forced extra frames. But for me, yeah, it's about losing the lead in regulation, actually losing two leads in the third period. And an interesting factoid from Penguins historian Bob Grove, the Penguins have had leads in 7 of the 8 games so far, even though it's felt like they haven't played that well to this point. I'm actually shocked. I was shocked when I saw that, just because it feels like they haven't deserved to have leads in all these games. But the only one they haven't had a lead in was the game they lost 6-0 to the Rangers on opening night. So in some ways, it feels like 3-4-1 is about where the Penguins should be. Maybe even they're a little bit fortunate to have 3 wins to this point. I could actually side with that after the comeback win against Buffalo. But also, you could say maybe the Penguins could have at least a couple of more points. And we all know shootouts can be random, and the Penguins have struggled in those lately. They've actually struggled in overtime as well over the last few years. Today, I thought they played overtime responsibly, but didn't generate much. And it was one of those OTs where there was really not a lot of chances on both sides. So we went to the shootout, went to the tiebreak. Rare occurrence these days after we've had, 3-on-3 overtime for about 10 years. The shootouts have gone way down. But in this case, the Penguins don't get the extra point, and they still stay below 500 officially. This is Penguins postgame, and we've got a good amount of viewers here. It's after midnight on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast right now. I'm in a hotel room in San Diego, tagging along on a work trip with my wife, and she's been so kind to allow me to run a little broadcast for you because I can't do the games at Edmonton or Vancouver, and I was in transit to sunny San Diego a couple of days ago when they played Winnipeg. But yeah, let's talk about this game. Let's talk about the last 3 games. The last time I talked to you was the big milestone night, the big feel-good night against Buffalo, and what a difference 3 games makes. So we have certainly dropped off the map as far as vibes are concerned. Let's look at some comments, and more hockey cards, please, is in the chat. He or she says never close out games. Well, they certainly look like that kind of a team tonight, right? Because they could have shut it down, probably should have shut it down after the Noah Achari goal with about 5 minutes left. And did a player ever earn a goal like Achari did tonight? Might have been his best game in a Penguins uniform in a year and a couple of weeks. And still, they can't win a faceoff. So actually, we'll put that one partially on Achari himself because he lost a couple of faceoffs after 2 late icings that allowed the Flames to keep the pressure on. And he blocked the point shot, and it went right to Nazem Kadri, who put it in past Nedeljkovic. No blame to Achari on the block shot. That's just bad luck. But again, you'd like to win at least one of those 2 faceoffs. If you get it clear, maybe you get the empty netter, and you're at 1-1 on the trip going into Connor McDavid's house in a couple of nights. Instead, you are winless on the trip and still below 500. Jeffrey Curry says Kadri. That's ironic. Why is that ironic? I'm not really sure. But anyway, Jeffrey also adds he's in Taiwan. So we have plenty of folks from outside the Eastern time zone, including the Penguins themselves, obviously, in Mountain Time. But Jeffrey says it's 12:40 p.m. Oh, show off. You're in the future, aren't you? At least I think that's how that works across the international date line. You can contribute stars to Pittsburgh Hockey Now on Facebook. That helps the page continue to maintain its best content by getting visibility. So please do that. Also, like and subscribe on the National Hockey Now YouTube channel. Oh, okay. Jeffrey says Dubas let Kadri go. Yes, that's right. I'm sorry. I wasn't putting all those pieces together, as it's been a couple of teams for Nazem Kadri since he was in Toronto, and it is a Stanley Cup champion we're talking about here. And I think Nazem's a pretty good player, but he was deemed to be too much trouble than he was worth in Toronto, and then he went on to certainly defy that judgment call when he won the Cup with Colorado. All right, so let's look at some of the details of tonight's game. The call to go to Alex Nedeljkovic, back-to-back starts, I thought was intriguing. I kind of thought we'd see Joel Blomqvist in this game, but or excuse me, Yoel Blomqvist. Got to get the familiarity with the new goaltender. But Nedeljkovic didn't play poorly at Winnipeg, despite allowing the 5 goals. And so I think it was a deserved second consecutive start for Ned. And I believe he delivered tonight, despite losing in the shootout, despite giving up a couple of goals in the third. One of those was a deflection. The other one, he barely had time to react to. And then the first goal of the game was a point-blank chance. So as far as I'm concerned, Ned can wash his hands of this defeat, certainly. And even though the Flames were outshot by the Penguins, um, I feel like the Flames certainly had plenty of quality scoring chances. And in fact, let's look at some of those scoring chance numbers, at least some of the publicly available data sets that are out there. Naturalstattrick.com is a great source for that. And they had the Flames at 28 scoring chances to 31 for the Penguins. High danger, 15 for the Pens, 14 for the Flames. So right down the middle, despite the Flames being outshot by a bit by the Penguins, actually by 13 shots on goal. And if you're just talking shot attempts, by 6 overall in all situations, the Flames got their share of quality. And if you're thinking about expected goals, each team earned a little over 3. So it was a right down the middle type of game. And I commented going into the third, it felt like there should have been a couple more goals on the board. Well, I guess we got those in the third, as it was a special teams game primarily, especially in the second period. The Penguins PK, in fact, went perfect on the night, I believe. So a good effort from them. They didn't give up a ton when it came to those types of situations, but they were porous when they were on the power play, and they weren't great when they were on the power play, despite the PPG by Brian Rust to break the ice. Power play opportunities, the Pens 1 for 4, the Flames 0 for 4, but the Penguins gave up several gold-plated scoring opportunities to the shorthanded Flames that could have easily broken that game open in the second period. So it's a weird one to try to assess, right? I felt like either team tried to hand it away at times, and I guess in the end the Penguins were successful at that, as they are now 2-2-1 away from home. They played the majority of their games away, 5 out of the 8 to this point. And the Flames, as I mentioned, still unbeaten in regulation time, 5-0-1 and 3-0-0 at home. They're now 2-1 in games that go beyond regulation, so they've cashed in the extra point, and they're defying expectations. This is the first loss by the Penguins. Well, loss. I don't really call a shootout loss a loss necessarily, but the first time the Penguins haven't beaten a team that was on their schedule that missed the playoffs the year prior. You'll recall they beat Detroit, they beat Montreal, and they beat Buffalo in OT. This time they get a point from Calgary, but Calgary looking at least a little bit improved. I'm not sure. I thought they looked like world beaters tonight, but good enough to get the win. Chris Burrell says Crosby looks like he's dealing with something. I think it's more. I think Sid's a little discouraged right now by the level of play, and I think Sid himself is responsible for some of the level of play. If you watch the video that we have here on National Hockey Now by Francis Anzalone, he's doing these debrief videos where he breaks down the video and takes it from a coaching perspective. Sidney Crosby might have been the Penguins' worst player on the ice at Winnipeg, not stopping on pucks, going for skates, looping around, missing assignments. So the Pens were better in that area tonight. Maybe they gave up a little bit more off the rush than you might like, but they were better in sorting out certain situations in the defensive zone. I thought they worked pretty hard as a unit. And you saw guys like Noel Acciari, Cody Glass, Michael Bunting in his return to the lineup had a tough moment early when he dropped the puck to nobody in his first touch after being healthy scratched at Winnipeg. But I like Bunting's game tonight. I like Ricard Raquel's game tonight. He's playing with more jam in the tight areas, in addition to obviously being able to snipe goals with the best of them. He had a goal in regulation and a goal in the shootout. So there was, I thought, a lot of good. People were really down on the Penguins after this game, but they fought back after a really difficult start. The Flames had the first 6 shots on goal. It looked like they were ready to blow the Penguins out of the building, but Ned made a few saves that maybe he didn't necessarily expect to, or maybe I didn't expect him to, and the Penguins went from there. So that's part of it. Goaltending is part of hockey. You don't have to apologize for getting good goaltending, and I can be guilty of really separating that as a different part of the game, but in this case, you ride the emotion, and the Penguins rode the wave for a bit there after Ned kept them in it. So again, rolling on with Penguins post game, maybe a shorter one tonight because it's well past midnight for most of you, and I am sympathetic to that. But I did want to check in because, like I said, I'm not able to do one of these shows after Edmonton or after Vancouver. Brandon Rickner makes a really good point. This is the comment of the night so far. I'll pull this one up on the screen. I always forget I can do that. I'm still getting used to the technology here. But he says it's one of those games that's okay to lose if you weren't already 3-4-0. Right. The Penguins are not in a position where they can say, "Oh well, we'll get them next time." I guess you have to. There's no other option except if you want to stay on the ice in Calgary forever. But they're going to go to the locker room. They're going to shake this one off and try to get back at it against an Edmonton team that just lost tonight to the Carolina Hurricanes. Excuse me, in overtime on a Sebastian Aho goal. So the Oilers have struggled. Maybe they can catch the Oilers in a down moment. I'm not sure. I'm sure as well that Connor McDavid's always fired up to play against Sidney Crosby. So maybe a little bit of motivation below the surface for Edmonton beyond the fact they're trying to dig out from their own poor start for the second straight year. So, yeah, we'll put some of these comments on the board here. Uncle Deebs, good friend of ours, says the core three aren't the greatest in shootouts anymore. I'd argue they never were. Malkin never really has been. Sid's run hot and cold, and of course he hit the post tonight. So beat the goaltender, couldn't beat the iron. And Chris Letang, for a while, that backhand move was automatic, not so much in recent years. I think he's the one out of the big three who've fallen off the most in the shootout. And I'm curious, maybe it's a better move to put Erik Karlsson out there instead of Malkin with the game on the line. And he says, but to be fair, this game should end 3-2. Can't close games. Who else is to blame? Look, I actually thought the Penguins sit on the front foot really well late in that third period until the extra attacker. And I don't know, you want to read too much into extra attacker situations. Obviously, they're important, but they are a very, very small part of your overall game. And the Pens didn't give the Flames any serious scoring chances until the block shot fell on Kadri's stick. So that's lucky in my mind. That's fortunate. But again, that's hockey. You know what else was lucky was Ricard Raquel's goal that somehow got through Dustin Wolf, who otherwise played a pretty strong game for Calgary. So a little bit of luck on both sides. And overall, the Penguins just didn't play well enough to overwhelm the Flames in regulation time. There was a moment there in the third where I thought they were going to put in a fourth one. Crosby and Karlsson looked energized. I think Sid looked as strong as he has looked all year in that third period. I think he sensed the finish line, but in the end, it doesn't happen for the Penguins, who now have to move on to the second half of this Western Canada trip. Another early Western Canada trip. There have been a few of those in team history. They once started the season on the West Coast in Vancouver. Follower of mine reminded me of the 2011-12 season when they did that, but they've been out west in October, I think 2 times over the past several years, not counting this year. So a chance to get together as a team, a chance to bond, but it's a lot easier to bond when you win, or at least, well, in this case, they got a point. But coming off of that really sad performance against Winnipeg defensively, I suppose baby steps. I suppose we're still early, but this is a Penguins team that no longer has the benefit of the doubt or the benefit of being able to wait for their players and the team to round into form. And I think, as Dan Kingerski has written about on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Mike Sullivan is sensing that, and he's making changes. He's moving guys around the lineup, changing defense pairs. Just the lineup changes tonight. Let me pull that up on my phone here. Drew O'Connor back on Crosby's left wing. I think he should stay there. I like that top line. They were a little better tonight. I thought Michael Bunting's scratch was a bit unfair. I don't know if he deserved that, but he gets the wake-up call. He plays better this evening. Puljujärvi on the third line. I was concerned they were going to bury him on the fourth line. I don't think he really fits there. With Lars Eller, maybe the quietest game of the year for Eller, including getting stopped in the shootout. But you can't expect Lars Eller to continue to pour in the goals and the points, can you? Fourth line maybe had its best game of the year, too, with Hayes and Glass and Achari put together. We saw Pettersson with Letang, Grzelcyk with Karlsson. Grzelcyk didn't have a good moment on the first goal, scored by Rasmus Andersson of Calgary, not being able to recover from a bad pinch. He should be the one who's doing the covering, not Erik Karlsson. He was the last man back, and that's not really often a good situation. Graves with St. Ivany. Ryan Graves is playing okay, but I'm not of the belief, like some are, that I saw online tonight, that he should be getting more playing time, maybe getting bumped up the depth chart. I think he's just fine where he is. Maybe I'm just scarred from what I've seen so far in Pittsburgh, but I'm okay with him being a third pairing guy. But the big picture story is Mike Sullivan is making changes, and again, Tristan Jarry not dressed for a second consecutive game. The Penguins carrying three goalies, so he's flipping switches and got somewhat of a response tonight, but not enough for the 2 points. Anything else from anybody? Anybody else still watching? I see we still do have some viewers, and like I mentioned, I'm still wide awake here on the West Coast, so I can definitely go for a few more moments. Let me go through some of my notes here and see what else. Um, I mentioned Bunting. I mentioned Raquel. His fourth goal of the season, by the way, ties him with Lars Eller for the team lead. Isn't it ironic? Last year it was all about the stars carrying the load. This year it's been all about the depth carrying the load. We can't just get those two things to come together. And I know it's only been 8 games, but still, it is ironic, isn't it? And the Penguins' power play did score, and they won't get the regulation win. So that's also different from what we've seen in the past. I thought this was interesting from, again, from Penguins historian Bob Grove earlier in the night, talking about Penguins depth forwards. Lars Eller, 19 goals. Drew O'Connor, 19 goals over the last 2 seasons. Only Crosby, Malkin, and Rust have more goals than them. So I think O'Connor's on the rise. I think Eller is having a late career resurgence. So you hate to waste this stuff, right? Because in a lot of ways, things are coming together. But in some ways, they're not, because the team cohesiveness just hasn't been where it needs to be. Ryan Wilson, or Gunnar Stahl, on social media, he noted that Matt Grzelcyk had the lowest expected goals for percentage on the team coming into tonight's game. So Grzelcyk, it feels like he's being used as a defensive conscience, either with Letang or Carlson. I'm not sure that really fits. I'm not sure he defends well enough to have that designation. So the Penguins are short one top four defenseman, I would say. I still think Marcus Pettersson's good enough to be a top four guy. And I think he fits well with an offensive minded defenseman in theory. And obviously, you got to play Carlson and Letang because that's what they're there for. And I haven't been the biggest supporter of Erik Karlsson. We had a question in here. I'll get to that in a moment. I'm souring on him by the game, even though obviously I see his strong suits, but I think overall he's been a net negative in Pittsburgh. But at the same time, from what you're paying him, from what he can contribute, you can't just throw him out there for 15 minutes a night, because then you'd be wasting him. You're not giving him the chance to pile up the volume of scoring chances generated that he would need to make up for some of the defensive mistakes and some of the areas in which he's not so strong. So the Penguins are thin on D, no surprise, and they might even be thinner on D now than they are up front if you look at the depth chart at both positions. And hey, why not go to the question? What do you think of the Carlson signing? Well, you mean the trade, correct? I'm sure that's what you're referring to. I liked it at the time, but now we are nearly 90 games in, and it doesn't appear to be lifting the Penguins' boat, does it? It seems he still has a hard time fitting in. I've had this thought about Erik Karlsson. Maybe he's the kind of guy who plays better on a bad team, because he's got to carry the load and he's got to be the guy all the time. And when he's got to share responsibilities with, well, not just Chris Letang on the blue line, but also stars up front, maybe it doesn't work for him. Maybe he has a hard time being a subordinate player. And we've only seen him make one really serious run deep in the playoffs. I'm sorry, two. The San Jose Sharks went to the West Final, I believe, with him one time when he was there, and then he went to Game 7 of the East Final before the Penguins knocked him and the Senators out in 2017 en route to the Cup. So he hasn't really been a key member of a very successful team, whether it be regular season or playoffs. And of course, he's in his 30s now, too. So he's not going to be quite as dynamic as he was in his 20s. And I do worry about his ability to adjust when, say, his skating ability starts to go downhill. Maybe it already has a little bit. Maybe we're already seeing some of that. I thought it was a worthy roll of the dice, but it has not appeared to work out. And that's part of the stuff you got to deal with when you're a general manager and when you're Kyle Dubas. he took a shot, but it does appear this year he's taken a step back, trying to acquire some assets over the summer in the form of draft picks and signing some guys who appear to be obvious trade bait this year, like a Lars Eller or a Kevin Hayes or even a Matt Grzelcyk. So keep your eye on that. Moving forward, maybe Tristan Jarry trade bait, but the Penguins are going to be the ones desperate to move him, not the other way around, where a team is seeking out his services if he continues to play as poorly as he has. And it appears he has no confidence from the coaching staff at the moment, including Mike Sullivan. Tay Coconut says Crosby wasn't playing well today either. Is he injured or something? I just think he's in a slump. I don't think he's playing very well. I think might be lacking a little bit of motivation, which is weird considering he just signed the contract extension. Maybe act like you want to be there, but at the same time, I think he also knows what a good team looks like, and I think he sees a mediocre bunch at the moment, and maybe he thinks, at least subconsciously, it could be creeping in. Why give all that I have to a team that's not even going to make it to the level I want to get to? If I perform at my best, it still isn't going to make enough of a difference. This is hockey. It's not basketball where you can feed the ball to Crosby every trip down the court. He's going to play a third of the game, maybe a little bit more. And at this age, I think it's fair to say that expectations should be dropped a little bit for Crosby. So other guys have to pick up the slack. Brandon Rickner has a Wilkes-Barre Scranton report for us. He says they look great to start the year. It's early, but when do you think they start calling guys up? Poulin has a handful of points. I'm not sure I look down to the farm and I see any guys who would be obvious call-ups. I think maybe Owen Pickering at some point this year gets a look because, like I said, the Penguins are thin on D and he plays the left side. So that could be an issue. Rickner also adds that he thought Graves had a great game. Yeah, great. I don't know. I guess I expected more when he got signed, and we just haven't seen that version of Ryan Graves. I think he needs more support, and he has had modest success in the third pairing role. I'm not sure that's enough to give him any more responsibility at the moment. But if Matt Grzelcyk continues to struggle, then I guess what's the harm, right? As I was talking with Kelsey Sermas of the Hockey News on Twitter this evening. By the way, follow me on Twitter/X. There you go. I'll pull down the title for tonight's show you my handle here before I sign off. But I'd like to have some conversations with Penguins fans when the game is going on. But I was talking to Kelsey. She made the case that, hey, if it doesn't work with Graves, if you push him up the lineup, then just knock him right back down. I guess I can't argue with that, even though I don't think I'd be so quick to make that move. I want to see more from Graves. I want to see a nice run of weeks here where he doesn't make big mistakes and when he is reliable. And I suppose tonight he was, even though, of course, he was out there for at least one goal against. Not that it's always on an individual player in that circumstance. We look at it. Graves at -2 tonight, so he was on for a couple scored by the Flames. Looking down the line here, Crosby actually had 5 shots on goal, tied for the team lead with Raquel. So it wasn't the worst game for Sid. It's just he only had a couple of really good scoring chances, and we're used to seeing a handful from him on a nightly basis. So Sid's got another level he can get to, maybe another couple levels he can get to. And as of right now, we're still waiting for him to work himself out of it. Malkin had his moments too. The Penguins scored sensed it in the third period. Crosby, Malkin, and Carlson, they were all at their best in the third, and yet the Penguins still couldn't hang on. They scored twice in the third. They take a couple of leads in the third. They've led in 7 straight games, but they've only won 3 of those 7 games. They're 3-3-1 since that awful opener against the Rangers. Okay, they'll be back at it in a couple of nights against the Oilers. Then they got back-to-back, I believe. So it'll go Thursday, Friday, I want to say. Let me make sure that I'm not talking out of my butt on that one. To finish up the road trip, they will have, yes, the Oilers. Oh, no, okay, it's the Oilers on Friday night. My mistake. And then it's the Canucks on Saturday. So I might actually have a chance to talk to you on Saturday. I guess we'll see about that. Anyway, I'm glad you stayed up. I'm glad you joined me here. One last check for comments, and nothing there. Again, I'm Matt Gajtka. This is Penguins Postgame. Take a look at Pittsburgh Hockey Now for Dan Kingerski's postgame coverage as the Penguins fall to the Flames 4-3 in a shootout. They pushed back after a rough start, but then gave up the lead, a paradox. And I guess a really good encapsulation of where the Penguins are at right now, essentially just right below NHL 500. All right, enjoy the rest of your night. I'm sure you'll be turning in rather soon, unless you are, of course, in Taiwan, like Jeffrey. Shout out to him for tuning in from the other side of the Pacific Ocean. That's pretty exciting for you. Good night. God bless. I'll talk to you next time on Penguins Postgame.